Welcome back to the Savvy Adjuster podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Bowles, and I'm once again joined by Alpine Intel's Technical Education Manager, Jay Dykstra, who is here to share a little more expertise surrounding solar equipment and what adjusters should consider. If you missed our original episode on this topic, make sure to listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. Jay, you mentioned how you got interested in solar panels while we were talking off mic, and I would love to share that story here if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So it's kind of a funny story. Way back, I had mentioned, if you listen to the original version, that I've had solar for 10 years. So probably 12 years ago, my daughter was about 8 years old and maybe 9, and she had to do a science project for school. Like all parents get sucked into helping science projects. And for some odd reason, or I don't even know how, she wanted to do something on solar panels. So I ended up getting roped into helping her put small solar panels on a dollhouse and helping her put in little LED lights inside and then put a light above that and put lights in the dollhouse with solar panels. And that's how I first kind of learned about it, kind of got interested in it. And then shortly thereafter, our town and our state was running some promotions and some discounts and things like that on adding solar to your home. And that's when I started the research and thinking, maybe this is a real thing. Maybe this is something I'm interested in. And lo and behold, 10 years later, I have solar on my house, and it's been a great success. And I've learned a lot. And I'm very happy for my daughter having a science project about solar panels.
It is amazing how things work out, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We're going to get a little more technical this episode. First, Jay, can you remind us about the different parts of the solar equipment? We're probably going to see things described just as panels a lot by laymen, including homeowners, adjusters. So can you go more into what those terms really mean?
Absolutely. And I'll just try to do it in a way that everybody can kind of understand without getting into the super technical part, which I think you can go back to the original one and hear from our expert, Gary, who is an electrical engineer, and tell you a little bit more about that. But let's just talk about the terms, again, as an adjuster you might hear, or what you hear around your neighborhood and things like that. So sometimes you just hear solar panel and that's it. So first, we got to make sure whether it's an electrical solar panel, PV, photovoltaic, or a solar thermal collector that's doing water. That's the first thing. But then we're talking about photovoltaic today, generating electricity. It really starts at the solar cell. So you might hear that term, but a solar cell is relatively small, at least in most cases, and it can't generate enough electricity to do much. You might get a little small solar cell that maybe you might use to help charge your phone or something like that. You see those things out there for sale now. Doesn't do much for your home. So what they do then is take several solar cells and put them together, and that would make up a solar panel. So that would be what we would think of when we think of a solar panel. That's going to be made up of multiple solar cells. Depends on what size the panel is, what brand it is, on how many cells are in a panel, because there's different sizes. But we're going to have several cells make up a solar panel. Then you still don't have enough to generate enough electricity to do much in our homes with a solar panel. So then we have to have multiple solar panels. When you put multiple panels together and link them together, we've heard the term daisy chained or strung together. They call them strings. We might call that a string with multiple panels linked together by wires, or we might call that an array. So you'll hear that in the solar world as well, an array. That's multiple panels linked together. Even if we have 8 or 10 panels linked together, depending on the size of the home and how much power we need, we might still not have enough power. So then we could have multiple strings or multiple arrays up on these homes or businesses. And in that case, we kind of even expand the term to say, now we have a solar power system, right? Which is all of those things kind of spelled out, starting from the solar cell all the way up to including the entire system, which is going to be multiple panels within multiple strings or arrays. Hopefully that helps.
Do the solar cells and panels come in different types?
They actually do. And so this is could get very technical. I'm not going to try to go that deep. But again, you might hear on claims, you might see this on estimates or quotes sent in from contractors about something called the type of panel either being a polycrystalline or a monocrystalline. And we actually, in some of our trainings, we do this as a poll question on which one is more efficient. All right. And people think poly is more efficient because poly sounds like a lot. It sounds like numerous, right? Poly. So you think it's more of it. It's actually the other way around. Monocrystalline panels, by the way they're constructed, are more efficient. And the only reason I really bring that up is because efficiency is a price driver. And if you're either having to replace panels or systems and things like that, we want to make sure we get like, kind, and quality. So I would think sometimes maybe you have a polycrystalline system or panels, and then the contractor is going to say, oh, let's go back with monocrystalline because they're better. It's the newer technology. We're going to be more efficient and things like that. That's probably not what the policy owes for. They'll owe for like, kind, and quality at the time of the loss. So if you hear the term polycrystalline or monocrystalline, just know those are types of solar cells. We kind of now expand that to the types of solar panels, and you're going to want to know which one. Got to get that right because it's could be a very huge price driver.
Are there any other parts of solar systems we didn't discuss on our longer episode that adjusters might need to know about?
There's a few. Just one thing that's kind of interesting out there is what happens if we generate more electricity from these panels than we're using? I have an app on my phone. I was just looking at it before this, and at my home, nobody's home right now. And the sun's out, I'm actually generating at home more electricity than my home's using. So where's that electricity go? So I do not have a battery storage option, which we can talk about a little bit if we want to. But in general, across the country, they have these programs, and it goes through what's called a net meter or a bidirectional electric meter. Okay, it's a special thing put in by the utility or the whoever's maintaining the grid. And when these solar power systems are generating more than the house is using, the excess electricity is actually going the other direction off the property through the meter. And so yours, like right now, my solar power system, my panels are actually acting as a generating station for my grid in my neighborhood. It's probably going into the grid and then being sold to my neighbor at a good price, right? So there's a couple different ways these work depending where you are in the country and what program they have set up. They have net metering that is per kilowatt, which meaning it's a 1-to-1. If I send a kilowatt to the grid that I'm not using, I get 1 kilowatt credit on my bill. So, and right now I have thousands of kilowatts built up that I can use later. So that's like a kilowatt bank. But the newer way to do it, and you see a lot of changeover right now, is called buy all, sell all, which means if I send kilowatts to the grid through my system, they are going to pay me for that kilowatt at an agreed, shouldn't say agreed, at a price that's been determined by them, right? So right now, at least in Connecticut, I've been grandfathered in. I'm on the kilowatt bank, but they've changed it this year to buy all, sell all. And right now the price is whatever I sell it for. When I buy it back, I buy it at the same price. I bet we can all guess what's going to happen in the future. They're going to raise the price on what I'm buying, but they're not going to raise how much they're going to pay me, how much I'm generating. So I think they're looking ahead and knowing where they're going with this. So anyway, there's a couple different things there. So if you hear this term out there about buy all, sell all, or kilowatt banks or things like that, that's what that means. So that it's an interesting way that works. I mentioned battery options. If you're off grid, you might have battery storage and things like that, but battery options or battery storage is also becoming very popular just in places that, now they don't want to do the buy all, sell all because they think they're going to be on the short end of that with the utility in the future. So they have these big fancy, now they're using these big fancy battery systems. My extra kilowatts go into the battery system, and then I can use it off the battery system at nights and cloudy days and shorter sun days in the winter and things like that. So, and those can be very, very expensive. So if that's part of your claim, you're going to want to make sure you understand those battery storage options. Just one other thing I'll throw out there, because almost all systems have them, are called communication modules. Because somebody's going to want to help track this. And all the people who have these systems want to know how their system's doing. I mentioned my app, right? So whether it's a website or whether it's an app on your phone, you can actually look at your system right now and say, is it generating electricity? Is it generating more than the house is using? Some of the more complex, fancier ones nowadays, the ones that I mentioned on the other panel that have these micro inverters at each panel, they can actually tell you each panel and how it's doing. So you might see 3 or 4 panels that are not working. That could lead to submitting a claim. It's like, hey, something happened to part of my system. It's not working. I'm going to turn that into my insurance carrier and see if maybe the storm hit it. Maybe I had lightning damage. Maybe I had surge damage, something to that effect. So communications modules are also part of the system. They can be cellular. They could be Wi-Fi. And it might come up on a quote or an estimate from a contractor. And you're going to want to know, what's this communication module? How does it fit into this picture? And do I owe for it? Do I not owe for it? And things like that. So pretty common piece of equipment that's going to come with a residential solar power system.
Well, Jay, thanks again for a little more illumination about solar equipment. And as always, thanks to our audience for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the Savvy Adjuster podcast for more great discussions on various property loss topics. We'll see you next time.